Long ago, Earth was a beautiful planet full of life. It had towering cities, green forests, and oceans filled with creatures. But Earth's peace did not last. The galaxy was full of powerful, unknown forces, and the most dangerous of them all was the Galactic Council. The Galactic Council was a group of powerful aliens who ruled many planets. They saw Earth as a threat. The humans were strong, clever, and growing too fast. The Council believed that if humans were left to grow, they might one day challenge the other races and take over the galaxy. So they made a terrible decision. They decided to destroy Earth. One day, the skies above Earth darkened. Massive ships from the Galactic Council filled the sky, blocking out the sun. Their weapons were beyond anything humans had ever seen. In an instant, they began to attack. They dropped bombs that shattered the Earth's cities. They sent powerful lasers that burned everything in their path. The humans fought back, but it was no use. The alien forces were too strong. In a matter of hours, Earth was turned into a wasteland. The once beautiful cities were now ruins. The oceans boiled, and the skies were filled with smoke and ash. The human race was on the brink of extinction. But as the Galactic Council celebrated their victory, they did not know that some humans had been preparing for this day in secret. Before the attack, a group of Earth's greatest minds had built hidden chambers deep beneath the Arctic ice. These chambers were designed to preserve a small group of humans, scientists, engineers, warriors, and leaders, who could one day rebuild Earth. The chambers were equipped with advanced technology, enough to keep the humans alive in stasis for centuries. The Galactic Council had no idea about these chambers. They thought that with the destruction of Earth, they had wiped out humanity forever. But they were wrong. Deep beneath the frozen wastelands, Earth's last survivors were sleeping, waiting for the day they would wake up. The years passed. The destruction of Earth was forgotten by most of the galaxy. The Galactic Council continued their rule, and the memory of humanity slowly faded. But deep in the Arctic, the stasis chambers quietly hummed with life. The humans inside were safe, but time was moving on, and they had no idea what the future would hold. One by one, the people in the chambers began to stir. Their minds slowly returned from the deep sleep. They felt the cold air of the Arctic on their skin, and their eyes opened to a world that was nothing like the one they had known. The first to wake was Dr. Elena Carter, a scientist who had helped design the chambers. She slowly opened her eyes and took a deep breath. Her heart raced as she realized that she was alive. But the world around her was silent and strange. The air was cold, and the machines around her were humming softly. She tried to stand, but her body felt weak after so many years of sleep. "Where am I?" she whispered, her voice hoarse. She looked around and saw other people waking up. They were all confused, but they were alive. They had survived the destruction of Earth. Slowly, they began to understand that they were the last humans on Earth. The world they had known was gone, and they had no idea what had happened to the rest of the galaxy. As they gathered together, they started to remember their mission. They had been saved for a reason: to rebuild, to survive, and to find a way to make sure humanity would never be wiped out again. But first, they had to understand what had happened. Why had they been saved? Why had Earth been destroyed? They looked around and saw the remains of their chambers. There was a map showing the location of other chambers, and they realized that there were others like them. But they were far apart, scattered across the frozen Earth. "We have to move," Elena said, her voice filled with determination. "We have to find answers, and we need to make sure the rest of humanity survives." The others agreed. Though they were weak and disoriented, they knew that they were the last hope for Earth. The journey would be long and difficult, but they had no choice. The Galactic Council had thought they destroyed humanity. They had no idea that the true fight for Earth was just beginning. As the humans stepped out of their chambers and into the cold, they felt a spark of hope. They knew the road ahead would be dangerous, but they were ready to face it. Earth's story was far from over. and they were going to make sure that the humans who were left would rise again, stronger than ever. The first breath of cold air filled Dr. Elena Carter's lungs as her eyes opened. She blinked, disoriented, the darkness around her slowly shifting into shapes and shadows. It felt as if she had just closed her eyes moments ago, but the empty silence surrounding her suggested it had been much longer. The room was cold, far colder than she remembered Earth ever being. The faint hum of machinery echoed in the background, reminding her of the high-tech chamber she had entered before the chaos. She had known that this would happen, the deep sleep in the chamber, but waking up was nothing like she had imagined. Elena struggled to sit up. Her body felt stiff, as though it hadn't moved in years. Her legs wobbled beneath her as she tried to stand, but her strength was weak, her muscles aching, as if they hadn't been used in centuries. She placed a hand on the cold metal of the wall, steadying herself, and then reached out, feeling the walls, the floor, the buttons and panels. Everything was covered in frost. The machines, once glowing with energy, now lay dormant. Her mind raced as she tried to piece together what had happened. The destruction of Earth, the Galactic Council's attack, the plan to save humanity. She had been one of the chosen few. She had been part of the group who had built this place, deep beneath the Arctic ice, as a final hope. But that was all she could remember. Everything else was a blur. "Where am I?" Elena whispered, her voice echoing in the empty room. Her throat was dry, and it felt like she hadn't spoken in forever. Her heartbeat quickened as panic started to rise in her chest. Had it worked? Was anyone else alive? Just as she was about to call out, she heard movement. Footsteps. Another voice. She turned toward the sound and saw a shadowy figure, struggling to stand. It was Dr. Marcus Hayes, another scientist who had helped with the project. His eyes were wide with confusion, his face pale as he looked around, trying to make sense of what was happening. "Elena," Marcus called, his voice rough from the same long silence. "What's going on? Where are we?" "I don't know," Elena replied, her voice shaking. "I woke up just now. The machines, they're dead. Everything's cold." Marcus stumbled toward her, clearly struggling to stay on his feet. He reached out to steady himself, his hand touching the metal wall, the same frost covering everything. "This doesn't feel right. The systems, they should be running. We should be in a safe zone. Not in this place." Elena's mind raced. They had been safe. They had been preserved for a reason, to wake up when Earth was ready for them to return, to rebuild, to carry on humanity's legacy. But now, everything was wrong. The world around them was silent. The destruction of Earth, the attack by the Galactic Council, had left them in a different world, one that they couldn't even begin to understand. More people were beginning to wake. Elena saw Dr. Noah Walker, the head of the engineering team, emerging from another chamber. His eyes were confused, his face covered in frost as he slowly stumbled out, looking as lost as the rest of them. One by one, they awoke, their minds trying to catch up with the years of sleep that had passed. "What happened?" Dr. Walker asked, his voice shaky. "Where are the others? The Earth, is it?" "Elena?" Marcus asked again, his voice growing urgent. "Do you remember the mission? The plan?" Elena took a deep breath, steadying herself. "We were supposed to wake up when it was safe. After the attack, when Earth could be rebuilt. But..." She stopped. The silence in the room felt heavier. There were no answers, only more questions. The world they once knew was gone, and they had no idea what had happened in the time they had been asleep. Elena moved to a console, still flickering with faint light. She pressed a button, hoping for answers, but nothing happened. She tried again, but the system was unresponsive. "We need to find out what happened," she said, her voice firm despite the fear creeping into her chest. Noah stepped forward, taking in the surroundings. "Look at this place. It's been abandoned. This was supposed to be a shelter, a place to save us. But there's nothing left. It's a graveyard." Elena's heart sank, If their shelter, built to withstand the worst, was in this state, what did that mean for the rest of Earth? They had no way of knowing how much time had passed, or if anyone else was still alive. They had no idea what the Galactic Council had done after they left Earth in ruins. How much had the galaxy changed in all these years? Had anyone survived? The group began to move, each step unsure. They needed answers, and the only way forward was to find them. With every passing moment, they realized just how much they had lost. But there was something else, something deep inside each of them, that made them stand a little taller. They were alive, and they weren't about to let Earth's story end here. As Elena looked at the others, she felt a spark of hope. It was faint, but it was there. They were the last survivors. The world had changed, but humanity had not been wiped out. They had awoken in a world that was broken, but it was still their world. And they were determined to find out what had happened and rebuild, no matter how long it took. The cold winds howled as Elena and the others stepped out of the stasis chamber. The world around them was frozen, quiet, and unrecognizable. The city they once knew, the Earth they had loved, was gone. All they could see were snow-covered ruins and broken buildings, standing like silent witnesses to the past. The destruction was beyond anything they could have imagined. Elena felt a chill run down her spine. She wasn't just cold from the weather. There was an icy fear inside her. What had happened to the world? What had happened to the rest of humanity? Was anyone else out there? Where do we even start? Marcus asked, his voice breaking the silence. He was looking around, his eyes wide with disbelief. Elena stood tall, trying to steady her mind. We need to find out how much time has passed, and what's left of Earth. We also need to find out what happened after the attack. Why were we left in the chambers? Who else survived? Dr. Noah Walker, the engineer, stepped forward. The first step is finding communication systems. We need to know if there's anyone else out there. Elena nodded. They had to find answers, and the only way to do that was to search. There had to be something out there, a signal, a message, anything. They couldn't stay hidden forever. Earth was their home, and they were the last hope for rebuilding. The group moved forward, cautiously making their way through the snow-covered ruins. The wind was biting, and the snow piled up in drifts, but they pushed on. The machines that once powered the cities were silent, and the buildings they passed were broken and empty. Every step they took felt like a step into the unknown, a step into a world that no longer made sense. As they walked, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. The silence was deafening, but it wasn't peaceful. It felt heavy, oppressive, as if the world itself was waiting for something. But there was nothing, no sounds of animals, no signs of life, just the endless white snow. This doesn't make sense, Noah said, his voice low. If Earth was destroyed, why isn't there any sign of the attack? Where's the damage? Elena looked around. He was right. The destruction should have been obvious. The cities, the forests, the oceans, all reduced to nothing. But here they were, walking through a quiet, frozen wasteland. There was no smoke, no burning wreckage, just an eerie stillness. I don't know, Elena replied, her voice filled with confusion. But we need to keep moving. We can't stay here. Hours passed as they trekked through the snow, growing more tired with each step. The cold was unbearable, but they kept going. They had no choice. They needed answers. As the sun began to dip below the horizon, the group found a building that looked different from the others. It was smaller, but it was still standing, its structure more intact than the crumbling ruins around it. A large antenna jutted out from the roof, hinting that it might be a communication station. We should check this out, Elena said, her voice filled with a mix of hope and fear. They moved quickly toward the building, relieved to find something that could help them understand what had happened. Inside, the building was cold and dark, but there was a faint glow coming from a console in the center of the room. Elena and Marcus moved toward it, while No checked the surrounding area for any other signs of life. The console flickered to life as Elena pressed a button. The screen showed static for a moment. Then a message appeared. It was old but still legible. Emergency protocol activated. Earth destroyed. No survivors. The words hit Elena like a slap. The message was clear. Earth had been destroyed. But they were still here, weren't they? They were alive, and they had to know why. Elena took a deep breath. "It's not over," she said firmly. "We're alive, and we need to find out who did this and why. We need to know what happened after the destruction. We can't just give up." Marcus looked at her, his eyes filled with worry. "But how? Who else could we turn to?" Elena clenched her fists, her mind racing. "We have to keep looking. There must be something else. Some clue, some signal. If there are no survivors, we'll have to do it ourselves. We'll rebuild." They spent hours in the building, searching through old files and communications logs. But there were no answers. The only message they found was the one they had already seen. Earth had been destroyed, and no one had survived. With heavy hearts, they left the building, stepping back into the cold night. The wind bit at their faces, but it didn't matter. They couldn't stop now. They couldn't give up. The search for answers was just beginning. As they walked back into the snow-covered wilderness, Elena looked at the others. They were all tired, and fear was beginning to show on their faces. But she could see something else, too, a spark of determination. They weren't going to let Earth's story end here. No matter how difficult the journey, they would keep searching, and they would rebuild. Earth's future depended on them, and they weren't going to stop until they found the answers they needed. The cold wind howled as Elena and the group made their way across the frozen wasteland. The world was silent, save for the crunch of snow beneath their boots. The sky was a dull gray, and the air seemed thick with the weight of what had happened. They had learned the shocking truth. Earth had been destroyed. But that was not the end of the story. No, Earth's destruction had been caused by a greater force, the Galactic Council, and the Galactic Council would pay for what they had done. Elena clenched her fists as the anger grew inside her. The more she thought about the message they had found, the cold, emotionless words that said Earth was gone, with no survivors, the more her hatred for the Galactic Council burned. She could almost feel the flames of revenge licking at her soul. They had taken everything from her, from humanity. And now it was time to make them pay. "We can't just sit here," Elena said, her voice filled with determination. "The Galactic Council must be stopped. They can't get away with destroying Earth." Marcus nodded, his face pale but his eyes burning with the same fury. "We need to find them. We need to take the fight to them. If they thought they could destroy us, they're wrong. We're still here." Noah, ever the engineer, turned to Elena. "Do you think we can get to their territory? How do we even know where they are? We don't even know what's left of the galaxy." Elena's eyes glinted with a fiery resolve. "We find out. We search for clues, for any sign of their presence. We'll rebuild our strength, and then we'll make them regret ever laying a hand on Earth." They continued walking, the cold biting at their skin, but their mission kept them warm. The search for answers was no longer just about survival. It was about revenge. They had a fire in their hearts, a burning desire to make the Galactic Council pay for their crimes. Days passed, and the cold seemed endless. The search for clues was difficult, but Elena refused to give up. They scoured old military bunkers, looked for any surviving communications, and explored any building that might have information about the Council. Along the way, they found more messages from before the attack, warnings about the power of the Galactic Council and the devastation they had caused across the galaxy. Each message they uncovered only fueled the fire of revenge inside Elena. The Galactic Council had destroyed countless worlds, and Earth had been one of their victims. They had thought they could wipe humanity out completely, but they were wrong. Elena and her team would make sure they paid for their arrogance. One evening, as the sun began to set, they stumbled upon something that gave them hope. A hidden bunker deep beneath the surface of what was once a large city. The entrance was well hidden, but after hours of searching, they finally found it. Inside, they discovered what they had been looking for, a map of the galaxy. "This is it," Noah said, his voice low with awe as he examined the map. "This shows the Galactic Council's territory. It's far from here, but it's a start. We know where to go." Elena stared at the map, her heart racing. The Galactic Council's home base was a long way off, but it was a start. They could finally take the fight to them. "We're going to make them pay for everything they've done," Elena said, her voice cold with resolve. "We'll get there, and when we do, they will learn that Earth is not gone. We're still here, and we will rise again." The group gathered around the map, each of them filled with a sense of purpose. For the first time since they had awoken, they had a plan. They weren't just wandering in the dark anymore. They had a target. They had a mission. The next few days were filled with preparation. They gathered supplies, fixed their equipment, and planned their journey to the Galactic Council's territory. There was no turning back now. They were no longer survivors. They were fighters. And the Galactic Council would soon feel their wrath. As the days passed and they made their way toward the distant star system marked on the map, Elena's anger only grew. The thought of the Galactic Council's arrogance, their belief that they could wipe out an entire world, drove her forward. She thought about the people who had died, the cities that had burned, and the families torn apart, and with each passing hour, her desire for revenge burned brighter. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. It was about showing the galaxy that Earth would not be forgotten. It was about proving that humanity was not weak, that they could fight back, that they could rise from the ashes of their destruction and make the galaxy tremble. By the time they reached the outskirts of the Galactic Council's territory, Elena could feel the fire inside her burning hot. They were close now. So close. "This is it," Marcus said, his voice filled with the same fire that Elena felt inside her. "We're about to show them what happens when you mess with humanity." Elena nodded, her eyes hard as steel. "Let's make them regret everything." And with that, the group prepared for the final step of their journey, the journey that would take them deep into the heart of the Galactic Council's domain. The fire of revenge had been ignited, and there was no stopping it now. The icy wind howled as Elena and her team moved deeper into the unknown. They had been traveling for days, each step taking them closer to the heart of the Galactic Council's domain. But as they walked, there was something else growing inside them, a feeling, a sense of power. Something from their past, something they hadn't expected to find, was waking up. "I can feel it," Noah said, looking at the horizon. "Something is out there. It's like a pulse, a heartbeat." Elena didn't answer right away. She felt it too. It wasn't the wind or the cold or even the strange stillness of the land. It was something else, something ancient. The map they had found in the bunker had led them to a strange place, a long-abandoned military base hidden beneath the surface. It was different from anything they had encountered before. The walls were thick, made from metal, and the entire base seemed to hum with life, as if it had been waiting for them. Noah was the first to reach the entrance. He tapped on the control panel, but nothing happened. Then he tried again, this time pressing harder. The screen flickered, then turned on. For a moment, there was nothing but static. But then the words appeared. "WDLCOMM, humans." Elena's heart skipped a beat. She had no idea what this place was or who had left the message. But one thing was clear. They were not alone. "What does this mean?" Marcus asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and hope. "What is this place?" "I don't know," Elena replied, "but I think it's time to find out." The screen flickered again, and then the doors to the base slowly creaked open. The air inside was cold, but there was something different about it. The place didn't feel empty. It felt alive. "Let's go," Elena said. They entered the dark halls of the base, their footsteps echoing in the quiet. The walls were lined with machines, but none of them seemed to be working. Everything was covered in dust, as if it had been forgotten for centuries. But then, as they moved deeper into the base, Alina heard it. A low, rumbling sound, like the growl of a machine coming to life. The lights flickered on, one by one, revealing rows of old war machines, massive metal giants that looked like they had been built for destruction. These are ancient, Noah whispered, his voice filled with awe. I've never seen anything like this. What are they? They're not just machines, Alina said, her voice filled with realization. They're weapons. As the group walked through the dark halls, the machines began to power up, their lights blinking to life. They were awakening from their long slumber, their systems coming online one by one. Alina could feel the power building in the air. These machines weren't just tools. They were warriors, soldiers, designed for one purpose: war. This is it, Marcus said, his eyes wide with excitement. This is what we need. These machines can help us fight back. They can help us take on the Galactic Council. Alina nodded. She had never imagined that they would find something like this, buried deep beneath the surface of Earth. But now, with these ancient machines at their disposal, they had a real chance. A chance to defeat the Galactic Council. Noah moved toward one of the larger machines, studying the controls. It's going to take some work to get them fully operational, but we can do it. We can bring them back to life. The team set to work, moving quickly to restore the machines. Alina's mind raced as she thought about the power they had just uncovered. These machines were not just a symbol of Earth's past. They were the key to Earth's future. With them, they could finally take the fight to the Galactic Council and make them pay for what they had done. As they worked, Alina's thoughts turned to the revenge that had burned inside her from the moment she learned of Earth's destruction. She had wanted to make the Galactic Council suffer, to make them feel the same pain that humanity had felt. But now, as the machines came to life, she realized that it wasn't just about revenge. It was about survival. The Galactic Council had underestimated humanity. They thought they could destroy Earth and erase its people from existence. But they were wrong. Alina and her team weren't just survivors. They were the beginning of a new force, a force that would rise from the ashes of Earth and shake the galaxy to its core. The machines powered up one by one, their heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath them. They were ready, and so were Alina and her team. As the final machine came to life, Alina felt a surge of power unlike anything she had ever experienced. They were no longer just humans lost in a destroyed world. They were the last hope of Earth, and they had an army of machines at their back. This is it, Alina said, her voice steady but filled with determination. We're going to make them pay for everything they've done. Earth will rise again. With the machines at their side, Alina and her team were no longer outcasts wandering in the cold. They were warriors ready to take back what was theirs. The Galactic Council had no idea what was coming for them. The air inside the massive warship was thick with tension. The crew, a mix of various alien species, moved silently about the ship, their eyes darting nervously. This was no ordinary mission. The Galactic Council had ordered a full-scale investigation into the sudden rise of humanity, and the reports from the scouts were terrifying. "They're coming," one of the officers whispered to his superior. His hands trembled as he read the latest transmission. "They've activated the ancient machines. The humans. They've found something." His superior, a tall, reptilian figure named Sarnak, glared at him, his sharp eyes narrowed. "What do you mean, they found something? What could they possibly have found?" The officer hesitated, then handed over the report. "The humans. They've unearthed war machines. Old, but powerful. And they've already begun to move." Zarnak's face twisted in fear. He had seen the reports of Earth's destruction, of the humans being wiped out by the Galactic Council's might. For years, he believed that Earth was just another dead world, a forgotten victim of their conquest. But now, the humans had returned, and with them, an army of ancient machines. This cannot be. We destroyed them. We wiped out their home. Zarnak growled, his voice thick with disbelief. But even as he said the words, a chilling thought crossed his mind. What if they hadn't wiped them out completely? What if Earth's destruction had only been the beginning? We need to act fast, the officer said, voice shaking. They're getting closer. Our scouts report that they're moving toward our territory. If they reach us, it could mean the end of everything. Zarnak slammed his fist onto the table, his claws digging into the metal. Prepare the fleet, he ordered. We will stop them before they have a chance to reach the Galactic core. Send word to the High Council. We need every available ship. This is no longer just a threat. It's a war. As the officer scrambled to carry out his orders, Zarnak stared out the viewport. The cold, empty space seemed to stretch on forever, but in the depths of the darkness, something moved, something human, and the thought filled him with a deep primal fear. Meanwhile, Alina and her team were racing across the galaxy toward the heart of the Galactic Council's power. Their war machines thundered beneath them, each step sending vibrations through the ground. The hum of ancient engines and the click of their weapons charging filled the air. They were ready for battle. Alina stood at the front of the machine's cockpit, staring out at the distant stars. Her mind was focused, her thoughts clear. The fire of revenge still burned within her, but now it was tempered with something else, something more powerful. Hope. The machines were more than just weapons. They were a symbol of humanity's resilience. They had survived. They had risen. We're getting close, Noah said from the control panel. We'll be in their territory soon. Prepare yourselves. The crew checked their weapons, making sure everything was in working order. Marcus adjusted the controls, making sure their ship's cloaking system was active. They didn't want to be detected before they were ready. But even as they moved closer to the heart of enemy territory, Alina could feel something in the air, a shift. The Galactic Council knew they were coming. They could sense it. The fear that had once been hidden deep within their ranks was now surfacing. They were afraid. And that gave Alina an edge. She had always known that the Galactic Council would underestimate humanity. They had thought they could wipe them out, erase them from history. But the truth was, humans were survivors. They didn't give up. They didn't stay down. And now, they were coming for revenge. Back aboard the Galactic Council's flagship, Zarnak stood before the High Council. His eyes burned with a mixture of rage and fear as he recounted the reports from the scouts. They've awakened the machines, Zarnak said, his voice low and cold. They're heading straight for us, and they are not alone. They have an army of these ancient war machines, and we do not know how powerful they are. The High Council listened in silence, the weight of the situation hanging over them like a storm cloud. After a long pause, a member of the council, a tall being with translucent skin, spoke up. If they have these ancient machines, then they must have access to old Earth technology. But how? We destroyed their world. There should be nothing left. Zarnak's eyes narrowed. I don't know, but they are coming. And we cannot let them reach us. The entire galaxy will fall into chaos if they succeed. Another member of the council, a sleek insectoid creature, raised its voice. We should strike first. Destroy them before they can make it to the core. Zarnak shook his head. We don't know enough about their machines. They could be more dangerous than we realize. We need to prepare ourselves. We need every ship, every weapon. We cannot take this threat lightly. The High Council nodded in agreement. The fate of the galaxy hung in the balance, and as the Council's flagship set its course to intercept the humans, the once unshakable confidence of the Galactic Council began to crumble. For the first time in centuries, they were afraid. Alina stood at the helm of their ship, watching the stars stretch as they jumped through hyperspace. The fear she had felt in the beginning was now replaced with something stronger, an unshakable belief. They were no longer fighting for survival. They were fighting for justice. And as they closed in on the Galactic Council's stronghold, Alina could feel the weight of history behind her. The Council had feared humanity for a long time. But now, humanity was going to show them why they should never have underestimated them. "We're almost there," Alina said, her voice filled with quiet confidence. "Let's make sure they never forget who we are." As the ship prepared for battle, Alina could hear the thunder of the war machines behind her, ready to unleash their fury. The Galactic Council's fear was their strength, and it was about to become their downfall. The battlefield was set. The cold, silent emptiness of space felt like a dark ocean, the stars like distant, dying fires. But beneath that silence, a storm was brewing, a storm fueled by vengeance, and humanity was at its center. Alina stood at the command station of the massive human warship, her hands gripping the console tightly. Her heart pounded in her chest as the final moments before the battle loomed. The Galactic Council's fleet was coming into view, their ships large and menacing. But Alina wasn't afraid. She had seen far worse in her life, and now she was ready to face the creatures who had destroyed her world. "They're almost here," Noah said from the tactical station, his voice steady, yet filled with anticipation. He was calm, but everyone aboard the warship could feel the tension hanging in the air. Alina looked out through the viewport, watching as the enemy fleet grew closer. The dark ships of the Galactic Council were massive, their weapons bristling with power. They were expecting a swift victory, but they didn't know what they were up against. "We have the element of surprise," Alina said, her voice cold. "They won't know what hit them." Behind her, the war machines hummed to life. These ancient machines, once buried deep beneath the ice of the Arctic, were now fully awakened and ready for battle. The humans had uncovered their secrets, and with the machines' power, they would have their revenge. The machines, with their unstoppable strength, would be the key to humanity's rebirth. The first shot rang out across the battlefield, an explosion of energy that lit up the darkness of space. The humans had fired first, and they had struck with deadly precision. A Galactic Council warship exploded in a burst of light, its shields no match for the sheer force of the human weapon. "Direct hit," Marcus said, his voice filled with satisfaction. He looked up from his console, meeting Alina's gaze. "We've got them on the back foot." Alina nodded. "Keep pushing. We won't stop until every last one of them is gone." The battle raged on. The Galactic Council's ships fired back, unleashing torrents of laser beams and plasma blasts. But they were not prepared for the strength and power of the human war machines. One by one, the enemy ships fell. The humans were relentless, and they fought with a fury that the Galactic Council had never seen before. "Another one down," Noah called out, as another council ship exploded in a burst of light. The humans had made it clear they were not just fighting for revenge. They were fighting for a future where Earth could rise from the ashes, reborn and strong. In the heart of the battle, Sarnak, the leader of the Galactic Council fleet, stood in the command room of his flagship. His eyes were filled with disbelief as he watched his fleet crumble before the humans' relentless assault. The once proud Galactic Council was falling apart, and they didn't even know how to fight back. "They're too strong," Sarnak hissed. "We can't stop them. We underestimated them." He turned to his officers, their faces pale with fear. "Prepare to retreat. We need to get out of here, or we'll be wiped out." But it was too late. The humans were everywhere. Their warships were everywhere. And with each passing moment, the Galactic Council was losing. The fear that had begun to creep into the Council's hearts was now a full-blown panic. They had thought they could erase humanity from the galaxy, but instead, humanity was returning stronger than ever. Back on the human warship, Alina stood at the command station, watching the battle unfold before her. The Council's fleet was on the run, their ships retreating in disarray. The humans were winning. But it wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about something greater. "We've won," No said, a smile creeping onto his face. "They're retreating." Elena didn't smile. She didn't need to. This was only the beginning. They had been to the brink of extinction, but now, with their victory, humanity was ready to take its place in the galaxy once again. It was time to rebuild. "They'll never forget this," Elena said quietly. "We'll rebuild what they destroyed, and we'll make sure they never try to erase us again." The warships, the machines, and the crew of humans had all played their parts, and now, with the Galactic Council on the run, Earth's rebirth was at hand. The humans would no longer be forgotten. They would rise again, stronger, smarter, and more united than ever before. As the last of the Galactic Council's ships disappeared into the dark reaches of space, Elena turned to her crew. The battle was over, but the war was far from finished. This was just the beginning. The humans had shown the galaxy that they were not to be underestimated. "We've done it," Marcus said, his voice filled with pride. Elena nodded. "This is only the first step. We have a future to build, and we're going to make it our own." The human fleet began its journey back toward Earth, the war machines trailing behind. They had won their revenge. And now, they would begin the process of rebirth. A new era had begun. An era where humanity would no longer be hidden, no longer be forgotten. They were back, and the galaxy would never be the same again. As Elena gazed out into the stars, she could feel it, the promise of a new beginning. The journey ahead would be long, but the humans had proven that they could overcome anything. They had fought for their survival, for their revenge, and now they were fighting for their future, and nothing would stand in their way.